Welcome, Hoosier Nation, to a March Madness edition of the Assembly Call. This is a very exciting episode. Josh and I cannot look forward more to getting to this. Josh, if you can't tell in the background, is in a beautiful, beautiful place right now where it's still daylight. Josh, where are you?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona right now, just getting ready for some spring training this week, and a little bit of basketball though too.
Of course, you can't leave. You can't put basketball in the backseat in March, although spring training has definitely gotten that shotgun for that car ride, becoming a huge thing now. But it is March. That means March Madness. Basketball still in the driver's seat. So we're going to talk March Madness. Everything that you should know, everything that we've got to put on the table, we're going to talk about it. How IU is going to do, how far they could go, our problems with the bracket, teams that were set up well, teams that were set up to fail. We're going to cover it all. But we're going to start, as usual, with IU. And Josh and I each have two keys for this game. We're going to do our normal drill, our picks to click, our three keys, which is now turned into four, two of each, obviously, and then our pick to win. So, Josh, I'll start off. My first key for this one's very simple. It's just play with confidence. Indiana is better than Chattanooga. It's not a secret. I think everyone who follows basketball knows that. Indiana needs to play like it. Take open threes, set screens, play fast, get up and down the floor, crash the boards, and get an open look in transition. Attack the basket, get Troy Williams going early. Whatever you got to do. Everyone believes in Indiana. Not everyone. Most people believe in Indiana. This is a team that people think can make it as far as the Final Four, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, whatever you want to think about. This is a team that people believe in, and people believe this team can make a run. Indiana's got to play like a team that can make a run, and people believe that they can make a run because of the way they play. And if Indiana wants to make that run, they've got to start with Chattanooga. They can't overlook them. They have to play with confidence and play their game.
Yeah, no doubt about that, especially in these 12-5 matchups. You can't start playing their game because then it gets late in the game, close game, and just anything can happen at that point. But my key in this game is you have to limit turnovers against a team that is pretty good at causing turnovers. I mean, this team has the SoCon Player of the Year in Justin Tuoyo, 6'10" on the inside. He's really good at blocking shots. This team turns the ball over a lot on defense, and if Indiana is not careful with that, this could be an interesting game because – Like I said, 12-5 matchups, always susceptible to an upset. It's March Madness. Anything can happen. And this is a Hoosier team that has coughed up the ball a pretty good amount this year. They definitely have cleaned that up. But, I mean, going back to the beginning of the year, you cannot be like you were early on in the season. Hopefully they have turned that page. But against this team that forces a lot of turnovers, you cannot be sloppy with the ball. You got to have crisp passes, move the ball up the floor. Yogi Ferrell can't have 5 turnovers a game. Troy Williams has to be under control going inside. Just got to play all on the same page. Hopefully they can work out that turnover issue, because if they don't in this game, this could be a very big problem.
Absolutely. And Chattanooga is a team that won a lot of games a lot of different ways. They won 29. That's one away from 30 for you mathematicians out there. That 30 points is a huge accomplishment for any team. You know that they want to get that, not just because they want 30 wins, but they want to advance in the NCAA tournament. They want to beat Indiana. And the way they're going to do that, they would have to out-rebound Indiana, which is my second key to the game. Indiana cannot get out-rebounded in this game. Chattanooga is not a team that rebounds well in any way, shape, or form. It's Justin Tuoyo, like you said, and Trey McLean are their top 2 rebounders that are active and not hurt right now. So, they don't really have that guy, like you said, Tuoyo, 6'10", I believe. They don't have that guy that can pretty much, they can outmatch Thomas Bryant in every phase of the game. But this game is going to be a lot on Thomas Bryant to hit the boards and make sure that Indiana does not get out-rebounded. Obviously, rebounding is a team effort, but Thomas Bryant needs to make sure that he leads this team in rebounding, and he shuts down Tuoyo and anyone else that tries to come his way. Box out, grab these boards both on the offensive and defensive end of the floor, set the tone early on the boards, and go from there. Because if they out-rebound Chattanooga by a steady margin, they'll be in good shape in the driver's seat. But if they get out-rebounded, this game may be out of their control.
Yeah, definitely. Rebounds are a big key. Offensive rebounds, too. Indiana's been pretty good in that category, but we'll see if they can do it on Thursday. But my second key to this one is you cannot commit stupid fouls. This Mocs team gets to the line at a very high rate, at a rate of 48.4%. And when they go to the line, they make their free throws. They shoot about 75% as a team. So if you're committing stupid fouls in this game, you are going to pay for them, and that could come back to haunt you at the end of the game when it could be close. Something could be going on. Foul trouble. You cannot get in foul trouble as well. So just got to play good defense. None of those stupid hand check fouls. I don't want to see Thomas Bryant hedging out on a screen and bumping somebody. No illegal screens. You just got to clean up those small things that could come back to bite you at the end of the game when the Mocs are potentially in the bonus or double bonus and they're shooting free throws early on. That cannot happen because they convert their free throws, and if Indiana is in foul trouble, that spells a pretty big issue there for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, Chattanooga is not a great team from the free throw line. They don't have anyone that shoots above 80%, and only a handful of guys in the 70s, which, that's not a bad problem to have if you're Indiana, but we don't want to test that. We don't want to make these 73% shooters, prove themselves at the line. We'd rather have them, try and chuck up threes at the end if they're down 20. That's what we want to see as Hoosier fans. But they're not going to get up 20 if certain X factors don't click. Josh, how about that transition? Our picks to click for this game, it may be mainstream. I don't care. It's too obvious to disregard. It's Yogi Ferrell to me because, yes, he played all right. He shot 50%. He had 8 assists, I believe, against Michigan, but only 14 points. And it didn't even seem like he had a 14-8 game. To me, watching that on TV, it seemed like he wasn't even really there. He was very quiet. He didn't have the same intensity he did against Maryland and Iowa on the road the final 2 games of the regular season. So he showed up on the stat sheet, but there's a difference between showing up on the stat sheet and showing up in the actual game. And I didn't see as much from Yogi Ferrell as I would have liked. I didn't even see anything close to that, and they lost on the final shot. Questionable, traveled, whatever. Not the point. But Yogi Ferrell needs to show up, make his presence known for every second of every minute that he plays, whether it be 38, 39, 30, 28, 34, whatever it is. He needs to be there every second of those minutes and just go all out. He's a senior. This could be his last game, and he's the leader of this team. No one questions that. He has to prove it and play like it because that is what this team needs at this point is their senior leader. It's March. It's built off seniors. He's got to show up.
Yeah, I mean, you had one senior. I got another with Max Bielfeldt, and he's going to be coming off the bench. And I was watching Andy Katz's show the other day on ESPN, and Yogi Ferrell was talking about bench play being so vital in the tournament, and that is what's going to happen if Indiana wants to advance far in this tournament. Is they need production from their bench, and I think Max Bielfeldt is a great guy to get that from. He's a senior. He knows how to play in the tournament. He was in the national championship with Michigan a couple of years ago, so he has been through the tournament from the beginning to the end, and Indiana can definitely take something from Bielfeldt through these games, and that experience is huge because with a team like with a bunch of sophomores and Thomas Bryant who's a freshman, you got to lean on those seniors to get you through those tough stretches when things aren't going your way, or if you get down early or something like that. You got to lean on those seniors, and especially coming off the bench, it's going to be so vital to get Thomas Bryant some rest. And if he gets into foul trouble, that could also be an issue where Bielfeldt can come in and play some meaningful minutes. So it'll be interesting to see what Bielfeldt does in the bench, what they can do. So it's kind of Max Bielfeldt is my pick to click, but it's kind of the bench they've got to provide in this game.
Yeah, and Bielfeldt has been crucial all year, pretty much the MVP for Indiana. And it'll be huge to see how he comes off the bench and contributes, along with OG Anunoby, who I think is just below him on the totem pole of importance, if you will. Josh, do you have a Ken Palm number for this game, the percent chance and the predicted score?
Yeah, I got one. Here we go. We got Indiana winning 76-67 with an 82% chance to win, and Chattanooga is ranked 107th in the Ken Palm rankings right now. So that's interesting for a 12 seed, I'd say.
Yeah, I was a little nervous when you said a single-digit victory was predicted, but then you think the 5-12, there's always an upset. If the confidence is in the 80s and the score is close to double digits, I guess that's okay. But this is going to take the full 40 minutes because Chattanooga knows how to win games. They won 29 of them. Not a lot of teams can say that. I don't even think Stephen F. Austin won 29 games, and they're a perennial 30-win team. So it's fantastic regular season from the Mocs, and there's no way that they want to be done come 48 hours from right now. But let's talk about this bracket as a whole. We can't not, right? And we can only preview one Indiana game because that's all we know that they're going to play. They could very well lose this game. We hope they win. We think they'll win, Josh. I'm predicting them to win. I'm assuming you are too.
Yeah, no, I definitely got the Hoosiers, and we'll see how far I have them going in a little bit. A little teaser right there.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to get into that. Don't worry, guys. But first, we got to get in our initial thoughts. Talk about the bracket, and before we even talk about the teams that got in, I think it's of note to talk about the teams that didn't get in. And Josh, let me just throw some numbers out there real quick. There's a lot of them, so stay focused, everyone. Just give me 2 minutes to focus. So I went and selected 3 teams that got in, to me, that were the most, head-scratcher teams, other than Tulsa, which I don't even want to talk about. I am absolutely flabbergasted at their entrance to the tournament. I won't even waste my time talking about them. The next 3 to me are Syracuse, Michigan, and Vanderbilt. And you look at the RPIs. Syracuse was an RPI 68, Michigan 58, Vanderbilt 60. Syracuse and Michigan both had less than 20 wins on the year. Below 500 against the RPI top 100. Vanderbilt was actually 2-3 against the RPI 101 through 150. You look at the road and neutral site games, which the committee really cares about. Vanderbilt was 5-11 in such games. 5-11 in games on the road or in a neutral site. I don't understand that. With a 19-13 record, they don't really have a couple huge wins that just really sell me. I don't quite get that. Michigan versus the RPI top 100 was 4-12. One of those wins was Indiana, that buzzer beater that maybe should not have been because the guy traveled before. Wasn't called. It's a matter of opinion, but it's pretty clear he took 4 steps. So that's one of their wins. You take that away, they're 3-13. There you go. And then Syracuse 6-9 on the road and neutral site. RPI 101 through 150. They're 1-2, and they were 500 in their conference. I think they get the nod because they're Syracuse. And I'm going to read off some of these other teams, people like Monmouth, and it's not because of the bench celebrations. Yes, it's awesome and belongs in the tournament above almost anything else that doesn't involve great talent. It's sensational, but they were 27-7, 4-4 versus the RPI top 100, and 17-6 on road and neutral site games. And that's what does it for me, is if you can win on the road, I think they had 15 wins on the road and 2 in neutral site. 15 road wins should get you in. I don't care what your name is. If you're Monmouth, if you're Gonzaga, if you're Kansas or Kentucky, if you have 15 road wins, you should be in the tournament. The next one, South Carolina, I don't quite understand. They were 8-5 against the top 100, 9-6 on the road neutral site. St. Bonaventure had 7 wins against top 70 teams. They were 8-6 on the road neutral site. San Diego State was 12-5 on the road neutral site, and runners-up in their conference tournament. St. Mary's had an RPI of 41. They were 9-4 on the road and neutral site. They were 6-3 against the top 100. And they beat Gonzaga, who won their conference tournament twice in the regular season. They were 2-0. And then Valparaiso was 4-2 against the top 100 teams and 12-5 on the road and neutral site, 26 wins, RPI top 50. So that was a lot of numbers and a lot of information. I don't expect anyone to follow every last bit that I just said. But if you were following most of it, the trend, and I can tweet this if people want to see, if they want proof, the trend was the numbers for these lower tier teams and the big guys in the smaller conference were so much better and so much more impressive than those of Syracuse, Michigan, and Vanderbilt. And Josh, I can't think of any real reason why these teams are put in. And I feel like the committee done a great job of that before this year, last year. I mean, do you agree with me? Do any of the teams that I mentioned, do you think that they should not have gotten in, or the 3 teams that I mentioned that did get in should have gotten in? Do you agree, disagree with anything that I said? I know it was a lot.
Well, I'll touch on your Syracuse point for a sec. I think that that the committee was kind of taken into consideration when Jim Boeheim was not there, because I think they had three losses, either top 100 or top 50 games in that stretch. When Boeheim wasn't there, they had some bad losses in that stretch. So I wonder if that kind of played into it with Michigan, maybe Karis LeVert being out. Maybe they took that into consideration. But even then, I mean, he's not here for the tournament, so why should they get it now? And then Vanderbilt, it's kind of an interesting thing right there because, I mean, SEC wasn't too great this year. I think there's only 3 SEC teams in the tournament this year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'll look over my bracket in a sec. But it's kind of interesting to see kind of the trend of what happened in Tulsa. I can't even explain that. But one point I want to get to is the Big Ten and how kind of disrespected they were in this bracket and in seeding, because I feel like they were all knocked down a step. Michigan State is a 2 seed. I feel like they should have beaten out Virginia for a 1 seed. I mean, they're in the same bracket, so I guess that kind of just that it doesn't really matter because they're in the same side of the bracket. But that's kind of interesting. And then Indiana, obviously, they are the lowest seed for a Big Ten regular season champ since 2004 as a 5 seed. Iowa, even though they faltered down the stretch, I think a 7 seed doesn't really fit them well. I think they fit in as a 6, and same thing with Wisconsin, even though losing to Nebraska probably didn't help their cause. And then Michigan's kind of an interesting team there. I don't really know what to make of that with their seed, but they were one of the last 4, and so playing game probably fits them pretty well. And then just some other random seeding things. I don't get how Kentucky is a 4 seed while A&M is a 3 seed, because right now, or on the last day of the season, A&M lost to Kentucky while it was an overtime close game. Kentucky still got the win, and in KenPom, Kentucky is ranked 7th while Texas A&M is 17th. So that's you can kind of look at the numbers there and say that doesn't really correlate all that well. So, I mean, just a couple interesting seeding things. Duke being a 4 seed, I don't really know if I agree with that. I feel like they kind of fit into a 5 line. Other than that, I feel like it's kind of an interesting bracket. I feel like there's some teams with like Virginia and Michigan State. They played each other the last 2 years, and they could play again this year. And I kind of would like to see them kind of change it up a little bit, but I guess it's just kind of how it all fits together. But just a big puzzle that this committee had to put together. And I mean, for the most part, it's solid, but there are definitely a couple things in there that were interesting. And with the bracket being leaked, I don't know what happened with that one.
Yeah, I was just talking about that with my family before this. How did it happen? Like, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, that's mostly for TV purposes, but still, it's kind of like, what the heck's going on over there? But no, again, to your Michigan State, Virginia, that those kind of interchangeable teams point. Thank God that they are 1 and 2 in the same region, because if the committee threw them in different regions, because to me those were the final 2 teams. I think Oregon earned it. Their strength of schedule is top 10. Their RPI is top 10. They've got a lot of wins. They're just an all-around solid team. So if you disagree with Oregon being a 1 seed, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you. I think they deserve it. But Virginia over Michigan State, to me, doesn't make sense. Because, yes, Virginia got a lot of good wins in the beginning of the year, and they were solid the whole way through. Couple head scratchers like the George Washington, whatever, and a couple ACC wins that, I think Georgia Tech and Florida State, but that, whatever. Michigan State lost some bad ones too, but Michigan State won their conference tournament. They've been hot for a month, and seeding them those ways, do the conference tournaments really matter is what comes to mind to me. Do the conference tournaments matter because Michigan State got a 2 and, Virginia got a 1, like you said, Kentucky 4, Texas A&M 3, and Kentucky beat them 3 hours earlier. It doesn't make sense. Do the conference tournaments matter? That part of the equation may lead you to think no. But then again, you look at Indiana at a 5 seed. Had they not played that conference tournament, you'd have a hard time convincing me that they deserve anything below a 3. Let alone, a 4 I could maybe understand if you put together a solid argument. A 5, not a chance. And after they lost to Michigan, I was thinking, probably a 4, could be a 3, but I doubt it, probably a 4. But that side of the equation makes you think the conference tournaments do matter. So what I got from all of this was the committee wasn't consistent in seeding the teams. Now, Virginia, Michigan State, like I said, good thing that they're in the same bracket, but that's just one exception, and there's just a whole plethora of head scratchers to me that I just don't quite understand, and I won't list them all because of, due to time. We don't have until 7 a.m. tomorrow. But the committee just wasn't consistent in their seeding, and this year made me really, really question how they did this, what the process is, and why is the weight of each factor not the same every year. It seems like some years it's RPI, then strength of schedule, whatever. They just seem to be all over the place, and that's the main takeaway I got from it.
Yeah, no. Those are all great points because it's kind of interesting. Like you just said, RPI 1 year, strength of schedule another, and then teams are going out and they're kind of tweaking their schedule so they have a good RPI or they have a good strength of schedule, but then when it comes down to it, and at this time of the year, it's just kind of like, hey, what we did this because we were following what you did last year, and now you just changed it on us. So they're being a little inconsistent there. And I mean, this is a tough job. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, when it comes down to it, and you leave it at a team like St. Mary's, who won the West Coast Conference, or a team like Monmouth, who went on the road for a lot of games and won some tough games, and they can't do anything about their conference that they lost maybe a couple top 200 games. I mean, that's just kind of what you have to do. I mean, if actually, no, I'm not even going to get into that. Never mind. I was going to talk about Rutgers, but that's not going to happen. No, but I mean, it's still March Madness, and I mean, anything can happen in this bracket. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a team like VCU make another run like they did a couple years ago, or a team like Northern Iowa, or I mean, anything is possible. It's March Madness, so let's get into some bracket talk.
Let's do it, but real quick, I gotta love your call out of Rutgers. I think we've gone every single show, and at least one of us has said the word Rutgers, and I think I'm gonna give us a little round of applause for that, because in no world should any weekly show be talking about Rutgers week in and week out, but we did it, and we had a lot of fun with it. Rest in peace to their season, but it was fun. We look forward to see how they do next year. But like you said, back to the bracket talks. What are some matchups that we like, Josh? I'll go to you first. In the first round, let's keep it to the first round, and then we'll look past that next. But some first round matchups that really intrigue you are blank.
My first one is in if you've got your bracket in front of you, bottom right, Midwest region, the 6 versus the 11. That's Seton Hall versus Gonzaga. I think that's a really interesting matchup. Seton Hall coming off a tournament championship in the Big East. Gonzaga probably had to win their conference championship game to get into the field, and now they're matched up against each other. And this is an interesting team because this is a Gonzaga team that was a 2 seed a year ago. They really only lost Kevin Pangos, which was their pretty good point guard, and they still got Wiltshire. They still got Sabonis, and Zimit Karnowski he's been out for most of the season. But this is a Gonzaga team that is capable of making a pretty sizable run, I feel like, if they can get past this game, because this is an interesting game against Seton Hall. They're playing really good. Whitehead is playing great basketball right now for the Pirates, and this team seems to be on the upward trend. Another interesting game comes with Arizona against potentially Wichita State. I have Wichita State beating Vanderbilt tomorrow night, or that might be tonight. That is tonight. I have Wichita State winning that game. I think that could be an interesting game for Arizona. They got to go all the way across the country up to Providence to play that game. Wichita State, even though it's a short rest that they'll have if they win, I think they're an experienced tournament team. While Arizona is too. They've kind of faltered down the stretch, lost a tough game to Oregon, finishes the 4 seed in the Pac-12. I think that's an interesting upset chance right there. So those are 2 6-11 games that we don't normally talk about. It's always the 5 and the 12 games, but I think there's some really interesting 6-11 games this season.
I'm with you. And, the 6-11, 5-12, even 4-13, I like a lot. And I'm actually going to direct everyone's attention to a 4-13. I don't think the 13 is going to win this, but hear me out. This is not my IU fandom and Kentucky hatred speaking, but just hear me out here for a second. Stony Brook and Kentucky actually poses a good matchup. Believe it or not, Stony Brook, in their first appearance ever in the NCAA tournament, came from well behind Vermont in their conference championship on their home floor, actually, last Saturday, I believe, in very impressive fashion behind Jameel Warney, who is one of the best big men, most underappreciated big men in the entire country. This kid had a game like you couldn't even imagine. They were throwing 2 guys at him, 3 guys at him, and he couldn't be stopped. He had 43 points off 18 of 22 from the field and 10 rebounds, 5 offensive, 5 defensive. Now, granted, he can't guard Tyler Ulis and Jamal Murray for Kentucky, but at the same time, this kid can ball out. He's one of the best big men in the country. He's the best big man in the America East. And, obviously guards play a huge factor in March and how far you can go. But for one game, if Stony Brook can get behind Warney and he can have a not 43-point game, but if he can go off, hit the boards hard, and get this team to play with swagger like they did on Saturday against UVM, they can really, really give Kentucky a run for their money. And if Indiana could come out with a win, maybe they'll be facing Stony Brook instead of Kentucky. I don't think so, but if you want to pick a 13 over a 4, I would probably look at Stony Brook over Kentucky or Hawaii over Cal. I can touch on that for a little bit. Hawaii actually is one of the most underappreciated teams in the country. They didn't play a great schedule. Their RPI is not fantastic. They score a lot. They play pretty good defense. Stefan Yankovic is their leading scorer, almost 16 a game. He's also their leading rebounder, 6.5. Their coach is a young guy, 34 years old, I believe. Going to bring a lot of energy to that locker room. They're going to play with swagger. They play quick. They like to play quick. And they've only lost one time all season to a team with an RPI below 100, which that's pretty impressive. And I don't really think any team outside of the 1-2 line can say that. So very impressive for Hawaii. They've got good guards, and they also got some solid big men that they like to go through, both of them. They're hot shooting. Hawaii over Cal is a possibility. Stony Brook over Kentucky also not unlikely, but definitely not likely. If you want to look at a big-time upset more than the traditional 6-11, 5-12, look at those 4-13s if you want to pick one. The stats and numbers are not in favor of that, but if you want to pick one, I would look directly at those two.
Yeah, you make a good point with Hawaii there, because, I mean, I was watching this with my dad the other night, and we were saying, what if Hawaii wins this and they got to go all the way to the East Coast? I mean, that's a really long trip, but they got lucky. They got put in Spokane, Washington. I mean, that's not that bad of a trip from Hawaii. I mean, I've done it before. It's not too bad. But this is it. You made a very interesting point. They had a tough game against Long Beach State. They gritted out that win, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Hawaii can make some noise. But another 4-13 matchup is Iona and Iowa State. Iona beat Monmouth in the MAAC tournament championship, and this is an interesting team because I mean, Monmouth is a solid opponent. Iona was their biggest competition there, and they're going up against an Iowa State team that has really not had too much tournament success in the past. They lost last year in the first round to Georgia State. So I mean, and RJ Hunter, that was a really exciting game. Iowa State's an interesting team to keep an eye on. Actually, 5-12 in that matchup too. Arkansas Little Rock. This is a team that has won. Let's look at 29-4 this season. Won their conference in the regular season and in the tournament. Earned this 12 seed. They're probably one of the better 12 seeds that you will see. So look out for Arkansas Little Rock, and how great would that be if Purdue went down in the first round?
Absolutely, and one of those teams is actually my Cinderella for this year. But one quick thing on Hawaii, they have 5 losses all year, and those losses are 2 to Long Beach State, who finished 3rd in the conference, 3rd in the Big West, 1 to UC Irvine, who tied Hawaii for 1st in the regular season, 1 to Texas Tech, who's in the tournament, and 1 to Oklahoma by 3 points. And actually, that 3-point loss to Oklahoma, 84-81, it came just a few days after their 16-point win over Northern Iowa. And I'm talking about Hawaii now. Hawaii could do this. Like I said, they've got a couple good big men, a couple good forwards, and then they have good guard play. They like to speed it up. They've got a young coach. They shoot well, then they score a lot. So, like I said, I don't know too much about Cal except for the fact that they can only win at home. They've got some not so great losses on the road, and they've got all their wins at home. So take them away from home, throw in a fast team with a young coach and a lot of swagger, and a team that's experienced and beaten some proven teams out of conference, which is more impressive than beating a ranked team in conference. This is an upset that could very well happen. And what a story that'd be. Who's not rooting for Hawaii if you're not from Berkeley?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. And this is a Cal team that's stacked with NBA talent. You got Tyrone Wallace at the point guard, at the point. You got Ivan Rabb inside, and you got Jaylen Brown, who's a great 3-2-3 guy who's really physical, is really built, really good player. He's just kind of raw right now, but he's definitely he's a definite NBA prospect down the road. And this Cal team has really struggled. They started off with high expectations. I think they were actually ranked right in front of Indiana in the preseason AP poll. They fell out of the polls just like Indiana, and now they're kind of making their comeback just like Indiana. So it's a kind of a very similar team right there, but they're definitely hitting their peak right now. But who knows, maybe Hawaii is going to bring them back down to earth.
We'll see, and that'd be an awesome Cinderella story for Hawaii if they can get that win and then proceed forward. But what should we do next, Josh? You want to talk about Cinderellas, or do you want to look at our matchups down the road into the second round, possibly Sweet 16?
Let's talk Cinderellas. I got an interesting one here. I do think Iona is a potential Cinderella team. I'll give you them, and I'll also give you Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin seems like they're in the tournament every year, and I think they won a game last year, and they always seem to win a lot of games, like you were saying earlier, and they do have a really tough matchup with West Virginia in their first game. And it'll be really interesting to see if they can get past that game. And then if they do, it's either Notre Dame or Michigan. They have Xavier on the bottom part of the East bracket. So Stephen F. Austin, Cinderella team that could potentially make a move here in the tournament.
I teased you guys earlier, and I'm going to follow through right now. Josh, you did mention my Cinderella team. And my Cinderella team, much to everyone's joy or much the music of everyone's ears, I don't know, Arkansas Little Rock. Without further ado, it's Arkansas Little Rock, the Trojans. Why? Because they play good defense. And they play Purdue first round. That's why everyone should be excited about this. Yeah, go Trojans, Little Rock. The reason I love their defense and what I saw Sunday from Purdue that really, really scared me for them going forward, not me as a person, but me if I was a Purdue fan and rooting for Purdue to go far, was the lack of leadership down the stretch. And A.J. Hammonds is a guy that has not impressed me really all year in that aspect, pretty much his whole career at Purdue. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but when you face a team like Little Rock, who they're so long and they cut off the passing lanes and they force turnovers and they slow the game down more than anyone you can imagine. They force turnovers, they slow it down, they make their shots. You're going to get frustrated, especially when you're a team like Purdue and you like to play a little more up-tempo, not at the pace of Indiana, but you play a little more up-tempo. Purdue is going to get frustrated if their shots are not falling. And at some point in the game, Purdue's going to hit a cold stretch. And if they do, Little Rock can clamp down. They can make a couple shots, get back in the game if they're down. Now they're inside Purdue's head. Who do they look to? Their leader, A.J. Hammonds. He's not a good leader. He doesn't have his body language on the court in the final 5 minutes is terrible. His communication is bad. He's not the guy that you want really to take the final shot on any team unless you're a team with a bunch of, 7'5" centers. He's not to me, he just doesn't have that it factor that guys like Yogi Ferrell and Buddy Hield have. The will and the grit to take over games late and kind of mentor the younger guys and show them what to do and lead by example. He just kind of seems like the guy that's like, just give me the ball, we'll be good. That's not what gets it done in March, especially when your team's frustrated. So if Little Rock can clamp down early, force Purdue to create their own shots early in the first half, not even midway, early in the first half, they can win this game. And I think they will. I have them winning. That's my one Cinderella for this. It's between them and Yale. I like Yale a lot. But to me, it's Little Rock. I think that Purdue matchup is favorable given their defense and Hammond's lack of leadership. I really think they can get it done.
Yeah, Little Rock's definitely a very interesting team. There was some talk that potentially Indiana could be faced up against them. I think they were mentioning some bracketology posts running up to this March Madness brackets selection show. But another team I want to keep my eye on is Northern Iowa. This is a team beat North Carolina early on in the season. They've had some pretty good wins. And they're going up against a Texas team that, Michael, we were talking about this before the show. You can either get good Texas or you can get really bad Texas. So it'll be interesting to see what Texas shows up in this game. And Wes Washpun, you got to watch out for him. He's an electric guard. I watched this guy in person when they were up in Seattle last year for the tournament, and he was very good then, and he's probably even better now. Hit the game-winning shot in the Missouri Valley Conference Championship game a couple weeks ago. This guy is the real deal, and he'll have a very interesting matchup with Texas and Javon Felix. And so, Shaka Smart, maybe he'll come out with all the stops like he usually does in the tournament, but maybe we'll also get bad Texas. So watch out for Northern Iowa if they win that game. Potentially Texas A&M in the next game. Oklahoma after that. We'll what the Panthers have in store.
Yeah, and talking about those next two rounds, Josh, I'm going to go right back to you. What are some matchups, 1, 2, maybe 3 if you have them, that you like going forward in the second round, maybe even the Sweet 16 if all the dominoes fall into place?
One Sweet 16 matchup I really would be intrigued to see is Kansas against Maryland. I think Maryland can give them a pretty tough battle. I think Kansas, they've been definitely playing best best basketball in the country down the stretch. But Maryland, they kind of haven't been. They've been struggling a little bit. Gave Michigan State a pretty good fight down to the end. That was a pretty controversial finish there with that final foul, but I'm not going to get into that. But Kansas against Maryland would be a very interesting matchup. Kansas always has some, I feel like in the tournament lately, they just haven't had it sometimes. They've been upset. And I mean, I was talking about Northern Iowa. They got upset by Northern Iowa a couple years ago when Ali Farokmanesh, if I say that correctly, hit that big shot. And I don't know. I mean, and maybe even UConn can take Kansas down to the wire in the 1-9 matchup. But another matchup I want to keep my eye on is Gonzaga against Utah. I have that predicted for the second round. Jakob Poeltl is a very interesting player for Utah. He was the Pac-12 Player of the Year. But on the other hand, I really like that experience Gonzaga has. If they can get past Utah, potentially Michigan State, that'd be a great matchup. But also Utah against Michigan State. So either of those two games would be really fun to watch because those are some really interesting players with Jakob Poeltl. You got Kyle Wiltshire, and you got Denzel Valentine. And any of those three going up against each other would be really fun to watch.
Absolutely, some big-time players right there. One of mine, it would be a nice Big Five, a nice good old Big Five Philadelphia matchup in the second round. Potentially Temple versus likely Villanova. Temple's got to get through Iowa, who, despite their late season slide, Iowa's still very capable of making a run to the Sweet 16. I think if they win, they could beat Villanova, but I'd much rather see Temple just for, history's sake, the Battle of Philadelphia. Temple, their numbers won't jump out at you, but they've got some hot shooters. And obviously Villanova's got some weapons galore with Brunson and Ochefu and Archie Diacono and all those guys. But I'd love to see this, not mostly for the historical aspect, to be a fun rivalry game in the tournament, in the second round of the tournament. You might even have Indiana, Kentucky, which I won't talk about because that's pretty much all you guys are hearing right now. But I love that Temple-Villanova matchup. Some hot shooting for Temple, a little bit of slower action against the weapons galore platoon of Villanova. But as you go further down in the bracket into the West region, I think Oregon and St. Joe's in the second round is huge. I think that could be very, very fun. Their numbers are almost identical when you talk about statistics in game. St. Joe's RPI is almost top 20. They're just outside at number 21. They shoot pretty well. You got Isaiah Miles and DeAndre Bembry, I think is his name. They're a great pair on the floor for the Hawks. And, going back to the days of Jameer Nelson almost, back when they were a 1 seed, I believe. But St. Joe's and Oregon, because no one really knows about Oregon because they're on the West Coast. Most people are asleep by the time they play, especially people in the state of Indiana. But, no one really knows about Oregon. Don't sleep on the West Coast. I thought we learned that in the Rose Bowl. But apparently, Oregon's out there to prove us wrong again. Maybe they could make a run. I think that their region, the West, is very winnable. I think that, if they get St. Joe's, that'd be a challenge. And then if they get the winner of, really Duke and maybe Yale, maybe Baylor, that's almost a toss-up for me. But, whoever wins that game certainly has their flaws of those three. So Oregon, I think, could make a run if they get by St. Joe's, which is an early test for a 1 seed. And in my opinion, a bigger test than UConn over Kansas if they win, and Texas Tech Butler over Virginia, and USC Providence is probably not going to give North Carolina very much of a run. So Oregon and St. Joe's is a very intriguing 8-1 matchup that I could see ending in an upset, but at the same time, Oregon still could go as far as the Final Four. I think they're talented. They knock down their open shots, and their region's pretty soft across the board.
Yeah, that's a very interesting West region. And Oregon, player to watch out for, Dylan Brooks. He's been having a great season, really played well in the Pac-12 tournament against Washington, against Arizona, and against Utah, which they blew Utah out of the gym. That was a pretty ugly game. And that's an interesting West region because you could potentially get Texas against Texas A&M. They played earlier in the season. I believe A&M won that game. That's an old-time rivalry with two Texas schools. Then you got Oregon State potentially against Oklahoma in the second round. I know that probably is kind of interesting to some people, but Gary Payton II is he won Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He is a very good defensive player, and if they put him on Buddy Hield, you saw how Oklahoma struggled against West Virginia when Buddy Hield had just 6 points. I think Gary Payton could potentially do that and give Oklahoma a run for their money. I don't think Oklahoma's going to lose that because Oregon State's also missing Trace Tinkle, who's a pretty good guard for them as well. But that's another matchup to watch out for. That's an interesting West region because you got a team like Duke, who's kind of underperformed, has a pretty small bench. Then you got Baylor, who's they've kind of been in that 15 to 25 range in the top 25 this year. So you never really know what you're going to get out of them. And then Oregon, who, I mean, you were saying it, they're on the West Coast, so nobody really watches them. So that'll be a really fun region to watch. I think anything could happen there.
Yeah, and that region's wide open. And who could get to the Final Four is a question that everyone's debating. So, Josh, let's join in on that debate. Who do you see? Who are your 4 Final Four teams? And just give me one quick point as to why for each one.
I got in the South region, I got Kansas. I just think they've been playing too well down the stretch. I don't think Maryland's quite good enough to knock them off. I don't think Miami, Villanova. I just think Kansas is just playing great right now. In the West region, I got Oklahoma. When you have a scorer like Buddy Hield, I mean, you just got to ride him. And if there's a player like Gary Payton or somebody on West Virginia that can really shut him down, that'll be interesting to see. But I got Oklahoma in the West. In the Midwest, I got Michigan State. I mean, you got Denzel Valentine. Just like with my point with Buddy Hield, Denzel Valentine is the real deal, potential player of the year in the entire country. And then in the East, I got West Virginia. I just watched their last 2 games in the Big 12 tournament. Their pressure defense is really, really impressive. They can press the hell out of you there. And West Virginia is a team that I really like out of that region because they're a tough team to prepare for if you're on short notice because that press is really hard to prepare for.
Absolutely. And as much as I'd love to disagree with you for the sake of, good TV, good radio, good whatever you want to call it, I really can't, except for one team. You look at the South, I like Kansas. I think if it's not them, the next best team is actually Miami, Florida. I like Angel Rodriguez at point guard. I think they're very well coached, but Kansas wins that. The West, I've been flip-flopping between Oregon and Oklahoma, and I ended up going with Oklahoma just because their path is easier. I think Oregon's got a tough matchup at every single stage of that region. And even if they play Holy Cross over Southern, that could be tough. The Princeton offense, 1-3-1 trap. You never know. That could be the closest 16-1 seed that we have this year. They're not going to win it, but it could be close if Holy Cross wins that game. Looking at the Midwest, I've got Michigan State over Virginia. I think, like you said, Denzel Valentine, the guard play, and then Tom Izzo and Marks, there's something about him. And then you look at North Carolina in the East. That's where I disagree with you. I've never really been sold on West Virginia. Huggins is a great coach. He always has his guys ready to play, and that press is huge, but I think that they just got a bunch of tough matchups. I have Notre Dame winning that first-round game over Michigan. There's no way Tulsa wins that first 4 matchup. And then I've got Notre Dame beating West Virginia. They're very experienced. They've beaten both Duke and North Carolina. And then even if West Virginia were to win that game, they've got to beat the winner of Wisconsin and Xavier. I just think that their road is so tough. And when you're filling out a bracket, you got to look at the roads, and it's just so tough for West Virginia. North Carolina's got it easier, in my opinion, despite who they'll get over Indiana and Kentucky in all likelihood. So I've got North Carolina moving on, and then I've got them facing Kansas in the national championship with the Jayhawks hoisting the trophy once again.
Yeah, I agree with you with Kansas in the national championship game, but I have Michigan State winning it all. I just think when you got a player like Denzel Valentine and a coach like Tom Izzo and a team that's buying in right now, I think that's a really, really tough task for any team to take them down. And Michigan State, I mean, we saw it at the end of the Big Ten season. They were playing some of the best basketball in the entire country, and they still didn't get a 1 seed, which is kind of interesting in my opinion. I think you were talking about that too. But I just think Michigan State right now is playing too good a basketball. We got Denzel Valentine, Tom Izzo. It's a pretty good thing going on over there in East Lansing.
Yeah, and we'll see how they can go, how they can perform through March despite not getting that 1 seed. But that's about all we got for our bracketology. That's not a thing. Bracketology special. I can't speak tonight. Too many words going left and right in my head. That does it for our bracketology special. Lot of games to watch, Josh. You going to catch them all? I know you're down there for spring training. How many are you going to catch? Half? A third? 2/3? What's it looking like?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be at the Cubs spring training game at 7:00 Eastern time on Thursday. So I'll try to catch a little bit of that Indiana game for sure. But I'll be definitely watching basketball. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And this is the first time I've been on break for the first round, and I've already reserved my spot on the couch for the 48 hours that's about to commence after tomorrow. But it should be great fun. It's the best time of year, and anyone who disagrees with you as a sports fan is wrong. Don't even listen to them. It's the best time of year. It's the best few weeks in sports. There's nothing like it. There will be upsets. We guarantee it. Anyone guarantees it. There will be upsets. It's March. Maybe the favorites won't take it down. There are a couple big ones. You got to watch it all. Even if you're not that big of a basketball fan, we can't stress this enough. It's the best time of the year, even though Rutgers isn't in the field, but Indiana is, which is even better. So we'll see how they go forward with this huge game for the Hoosiers. Got to beat Chattanooga, and then if they can, it's likely on to Kentucky. Don't be surprised if it's Stony Brook. Josh, you got any last words for everybody?
Hopefully we have another IU game to preview next week if they make it down to the Sweet 16. That's all I got, though. I don't want to jinx anything.
Yeah, we won't go much further than that. So hopefully our fingers are crossed. Let's see if karma catches up to Kentucky for backing down from this rivalry game, one of the greatest unsung rivalries in college sports. So that about does it for us. Go Hoosiers. It's the biggest time of year. We'll all be rooting hard for them. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully we will see you again by the end of the season, which means Indiana will keep winning. We'll see. Keep the Twitter feed going for the guys doing the post-game show after Chattanooga, hopefully more. Stay tuned with everything. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Twitter. Do it all. Have a great week. Go Hoosiers.